So yesterday I spent the morning crunching the numbers and deciding who I think will make the final 53-man roster for the Packers. We're currently at around 79 at the moment, and in 3 days we'll be down to 53 coming Tuesday when the final roster will be announced. So I spent yesterday morning crunching it all down, giving my thoughts, and I wrote an entire article. I sent it out to everyone who was on my Packers email newsletter list. So if you guys are on that, you got this yesterday in your inbox. And if you guys want to get them in the future, feel free to click the link down below and enter your email. And the plan for this newsletter / email list is that probably 2 to 3 times a week, I'm going to be sending things out, sort of like articles. Lots of them are like Q&As, as well as other things, something like this, like predicting the final roster, other sort of ideas that I have, because I've enjoyed writing recently, and so I want to do more of that. And so if you guys want to support that work and get these delivered to you throughout the week, you can click the link down below and sign up after you finish watching this video. But I want to go through each position and give my prediction and show you guys it here. And I thought it'd be easier to sort of show this on the screen as well, so just that way you guys can see exactly who I'm talking about. So first off, starting with quarterback, I say the Packers keep 2 in Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love. Danny Etling has had I say somewhat productive preseason, especially that one game. He has that 51-yard touchdown run. But I think we've seen the Packers last year only keep 2 QBs. Kurt Benkert didn't make the roster last year, was placed on the practice squad. And just with all the other needs at every other position, I really do think that that's going to happen once again. And so I think that's going to be Rodgers and Love at QB, and then hopefully Etling ends up on the practice squad. And now moving on to running back, where there has been the debate as to, which running back is going to potentially get the third spot. There's a chance there's only 2 running backs, but I think it'll be 3. And I think it's going to be Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, and Tyler Goodson. And I think every single preseason game, we saw just how explosive and how good Tyler Goodson is with the ball in his hands. And I know Matt LaFleur has said that special teams is going to play a huge factor in that third running back spot. And maybe Patrick Taylor pushes Tyler Goodson out in that category, because we saw on, what night was the game? Thursday night? That was the game, right? Yeah, Thursday night, Tyler Goodson was returning a kick or punt, fumbled it, didn't go well. But I just think he's so good of a runner that I just can't imagine him not being on this roster, because he's honestly electric. And to think that he was an undrafted rookie, I think the Packers need to keep him on this roster. Now moving on to wide receiver, which has been one of the biggest debates this entire offseason. How many wide receivers will the Packers keep? And I've said for the past couple weeks that I do think it's going to be 7 wide receivers, and I'm sticking with that, even though after watching the preseason game, Samori Toure having his 6 receptions for 83 yards, he did try to push his way in there. I'm still going to go with 7 just because I think 8 is way too many. It could be 8. It could be Samori. Maybe he makes it over Juwann Winfree, but here you can see my 7. Lazard, Randall Cobb, Sammy Watkins, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Amari Rodgers, and Juwann Winfree. I think definitely these 6, Lazard, the first 6 besides Winfree, will make it. Sammy Watkins, being a veteran, Rodgers has praised what he's been able to do. Lazard and Cobb, locks. Doubs and Christian Watson, locks. And then I think Amari Rodgers, we've seen from him this preseason just the multiple ways the Packers have been using him in the backfield as a running back, in motions and screens and all these things. And I think that he's going to be utilized this year as well. And so then I think that leaves Juwann Winfree, just because he has, shined a little bit in preseason, and Aaron Rodgers has praised what Juwann Winfree has done. So I like to listen to what Aaron Rodgers says, because when he's praising a guy, he's probably saying, maybe we should keep this guy. And even though Samori Toure did have a great final week, I think that looking at the whole, I think Juwann Winfree will make it over him. We will see. I could be wrong, and maybe it's 8. Maybe Toure makes it over Winfree. But I'm curious to see. But that is my prediction. Now moving on to tight end, I have 4. Tunyon, Josiah DeGuara, Mercedes Lewis, and Tyler Davis. And I think the point of contention here could be Tyler Davis, because of his struggles in the first 2 preseason games, making, some dumb mistakes with penalties, and then also fumbling the ball a couple times. And so I think, though, when you watched Matt LaFleur's press conference after that game, reporters were asking LaFleur about Tyler Davis and sort of what he's seen from him. And LaFleur had lots of praise, and he said he hasn't, you can't just look at those mistakes he's made. He's made lots of positive impacts on this team as well. And so because hearing Matt LaFleur praise Tyler Davis, I'm thinking that maybe his value in special teams and other areas is going to allow him to stay on this roster, because of just all the praise Matt LaFleur had for Tyler Davis. So those are my 4 tight ends I have. And then here we have for offensive line. So for the past 3 years, the Packers have kept about 9 offensive linemen, and I think this year it's going to be 10. When we look at the injuries to both Bakhtiari and Elgton Jenkins, they could both not be starting week 1. We'll see. They're off the PUP list, but they have yet to be, fully participating in the team periods, and we will see in the next 2 weeks if they're able to get there. So those guys definitely make the roster. And then we have the starting group, which I wrote here, has been for a lot of this preseason. Yosh Nijman, left tackle. John Runyon Jr., left guard. Josh Myers at center. Jake Hansen at right guard. And Royce Newman at right tackle. So I do think all of these guys will make it. And then moving on from there, we have Zach Tom, who has played very well. And I made a video on him in the past few days. Just says how good he has been. Playing a lot of right tackle. Also used at left guard in the last preseason game. And then Sean Ryan, he hasn't really been spectacular this preseason. And I think it's going to take time for him to develop. But he was a 3rd-round pick, so the odds, I think, of the Packers cutting him are not high because I would assume someone else would scoop him up. So I think the Packers will keep Sean Ryan. And then the final one we have here is Caleb Jones, the 6'9" tackle who was recently added here this past season in Green Bay. And I think that when you look at just how good he could be in the future because of his size, I just don't think you can risk allowing another team to come in here and scoop him up. So I say this year the Packers keep one more than usual in Caleb Jones. And maybe if Bakhtiari and Elgton Jenkins were fully healthy, it'd be 9, but I'm going to stick with 10 here. And now moving to the defensive side of the ball, starting off with defensive line. So I said Kenny Clark, Jaron Reed, Dean Lowry, they seem like they're going to be the starters when week 1 comes around. TJ Slayton, now coming into year 2, he looks much better, and I think that he is going to be utilized a lot when it comes to the defensive line depth, especially when it comes to playing against the run. And Devontae Wyatt, I think, hasn't really been insanely productive up to this point, and I heard some coaches speaking in press conferences stating that defensive line is one of those positions where it's a lot harder to transition coming from college to the NFL. So I think we just need to give Devontae Wyatt some time because he is an insane athlete, and we saw just how productive he was in college at Georgia, but he'll definitely be on this roster. And then I think that Jack Heflin is going to finish off this group. If you watched him this entire preseason, you saw just how much better he was in comparison to last year. He showed some flashes this year, but I think this preseason he's been a lot more consistent, and I do think he's going to finish off this final roster. One other guy who I talked about in a recent Packers Q&A I did on this on my site is Chris Slayton. At times looked very good, but I just don't think when you're like adding up all the numbers of every position, I think that 7 is too many to keep. It could be even 5 on the D-line. So I think that unfortunately for Chris Slayton, I think he just misses the cut. Now moving on to inside linebacker. So the Packers inside linebacker group is probably one of the deepest we've ever had, honestly. First off with Devondre Campbell being here, no doubt he's a baller. And then Quay Walker being added this past season in the first round. He's looked very good, especially in the final preseason game. And I think to have both of those guys, both at 6'4", both with insane speed, insane length, we are going to be set at inside linebacker, which I do think is going to allow this Packers defense to be even better than they were last season. And then Chris Barnes has been flying around. He's always been a guy who flies around to the ball. It makes huge hits, huge tackles. He's been great. And then Isaiah McDuffie. He didn't do much last year, but we've seen in this preseason, especially the second game, he is flying to the ball sort of similarly to Chris Barnes. And I think that to have these two guys as depth at inside linebacker, they are great. They are great depth pieces here for Green Bay. And then moving to the outside linebacker position, I said they keep 4 with Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Kingsley Enagbare, and Jonathan Garvin. So the third edge rusher spot has been one of the areas where there's been that competition this preseason, this training camp, with Zadarius Smith gone. Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith are locks at 1 and 2. Very, very solid edge rushers. But then outside of that, there's been that competition. So Kingsley Enagbare was a 5th-round draft pick, and I honestly think, as I said here, I feel like he's a steal in the 5th round just from what we've seen so far in preseason, just as to his explosiveness, his motor, just how talented he is. I think he's going to end up being a very good player and a steal in the 5th round. And so I think he'll finish off their third or 4th spot, and then Jonathan Garvin here, I think, will be the final guy. I was debating between Kobe Jones, who showed some flashes, as well as Tipa Naliai, but I think that these are going to be the 4, and we will see if I'm right or if I am mistaken. Now moving on to cornerback, I say we keep 5. With Jair, Eric Stokes, and Rasul Douglas as the top 3, which there is no doubt in my mind that those guys they're definitely sticking on this roster, 100%. And then I think the final 2 will be Keyshawn Nixon, who was recently added from the Las Vegas Raiders, also a big special teams guy who is very good in the slot. And then Shamar Jean-Charles has taken another huge step forward this year from being drafted last year to this next season. He's been, in these preseason games, he's been sticky in coverage. Every time the ball is thrown in his way, he's like always clamped up on his receiver, whoever he's guarding. And so I think he finishes off that final spot because Rasul Douglas can also be utilized on the outside. So let's say if, for example, an injury happens, let's say Jair goes down or Eric Stokes goes down, Rasul Douglas can kick out to the outside, and then we can put Keyshawn Nixon or Shamar Jean-Charles into that slot nickel role whenever that needs to happen. And then one thing that's interesting I want to keep to point out is the fact that Rasul Douglas in that one practice in the past week or so was used at safety because Darnell Savage is still dealing with his injury. So that would be interesting if Savage is still injured. Will the Packers want to throw out Rasul Douglas out there? I mean, I feel like he's such a good cornerback. Why can't you use him at safety as well? So we'll see if that ever happens depending on, Savage's injury. But those are my 5 picks for cornerback. I do think Rico Gafford was used a lot in special teams. So if they really see him as a huge special teams piece, I think that's the reason he would be, the 6th cornerback. And then Keandre Thomas also had some very nice plays during the preseason. So I can only keep so many players, so I kept 5 there. But I would not be surprised if one of those guys maybe was the sixth guy there. And then finishing off the defense here with safety, I say the Packers keep 5 safeties with Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage, Dallin Levitt, Sean Davis, and then Micah Abernathy. So as I've said, the safeties have been plagued with injuries this preseason, with Savage being injured, Dallin Levitt being injured as well. And because of that, Micah Abernathy, who was only added in the past few weeks, who was formerly playing in the USFL, he's had a lot of opportunity, and especially in his first preseason game, having the interception and that 1 tackle for loss, and then also being one of the leading tacklers in the final preseason game, I think he is going to push ahead and make this final roster spot for the safeties. When we look at the Packers safety, one safety who left or who got released was Vernon Scott, dealing with an injury. And then also because of the injuries to Savage and Levitt, I just think that the Packers will also keep Davis as well as Abernathy. But those are the final picks for safety. And then here we have the most exciting roster spots. We got kicker Mason Crosby, who has been dealing with an injury. If he's not able to start the week 1, maybe it's Ramiz Ahmed, unless the Packers decide to sign another kicker, and they have tried out lots of kickers. And then we have Pat O'Donnell at punter, who was recently added from the Bears, and then Jack Coco, who is the only safety or the only long snapper left here in Green Bay, with the Packers recently in the past month or so getting rid of Steven Wirtle, who snapped some last year for the Packers. So those are my final 53. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as I said, I will be sending out probably 1 to 3 emails a week about the Packers, depending on if there's anything I find exciting enough to write about. So if you want to get those in your inbox, feel free to click the link down below, enter your email, and then you'll get everything I ever send out there the second I post it. And as I said, I posted this yesterday, so you can go check this out as well. If you click that link, you should be led to this if you want to, check out more of what I had to say about the Packers' final 53-man roster. But we will see what it is on Tuesday when they release the actual roster. We'll see who makes the cut and then who ends up being on the practice squad as well. But I think the Packers have 2 more practices before Tuesday, and then we're getting very close to the season, which is very, very exciting that we're almost to some real football that actually matters. But I want to say thank you to you guys for subscribing, for watching these videos. I do appreciate your guys' support. But that is all I have for today, and I'll see you guys next time.